You are now listening to the Insight Fantasy Sports Podcast.
Welcome all and welcome into the Insight NFL Podcast. We're back. It's Tuesday, the 16th of December. The final game of Week 15 and the first week of the playoffs has come to a close today. Secko, first week of the playoffs. I know myself, I was trying to count out how many leagues I got knocked out of. 3 on my end. Luckily for me, I have a boatload of other leagues that I've still got to place. But how are you feeling, or really how are you coping after Week 15? And do you have any disappointing losses as we head into Week 16?
Yeah, I do. I only got knocked out in one league, which is good. That was one of the Insight leagues. The guy had Tua, and I had Jalen Warren, and I was up by 11 points late in the third quarter. And all junk time Tua got him over the line by less than 3 in the end, and I'm knocked out. And Jalen Warren gets one of those goal line touchdowns, and it's too much of a lead. But anyway, junk time is also fantasy time, so you can't do much about that. And sometimes it works for you, sometimes it works against you. And this time it's knocked me out. But anyway, it was my worst league. I only just scraped into the playoffs.
It hurts. It hurts, when you're a clear favorite, even heading into the final game for 3/4 of the game, and then the game script goes the other way, and you can just get absolutely shanked down the back end. It does not a good feeling. I know for me, I lost to Maverick, who headlines the NBA, NBL, and NRL. Yeah, it's so grateful to go down to him this week in the Creators League. That's going to be one that haunts me, but don't place your door after he has a good week. That's all I can really say on that one. But we do have a monster show for you tonight. We will be merging our main review and recovery after the week of games from a SuperCoach lens, going through our Heroes and Heartbreakers, the injuries, of course. And then at the end, we will have our top waiver wire targets if you are onto your next week in traditional fantasy. We've got a guy each that definitely, if you can pick up either of these players, it's going to give you a better hope if you are yearning at some more talent in that position. But Secko, before we get into the injuries here, final game of Week 15, we had the Dolphins and the Steelers. How did you find that game? I know Darren Waller, he cost you down the back stretch. He's a massive touchdown guy. I know he'll be getting a little feature in our waivers segment at the back end. But how did you feel about this game as a whole? I know you had Jalen Warren. I had Jalen Warren myself. Looks like Kenny Gainwell has kind of taken over for the most part. Maybe there was news that Jalen Warren was dealing with an illness before the game, so maybe they kind of split that a little bit more. But Gainwell just looked like the better back, was well more involved in the passing game with Aaron Rodgers. I feel like he was definitely out on the field a lot more than what Warren was. But what were your key takeaways from this final game of the week?
Yeah, it was great. It was a great game. Tua was horrible until the game was over and Pittsburgh stopped defending. So, it was a horrible game. They went up by 3 scores in the third quarter. They would have tried a bit harder to stop them, but they let them just through and bruise free because the Steelers now move up a game clear in the division. So they're looking to play playoffs, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, Gainwell was better. He had one more carry. If you take away his big 38-yard rush, he had 12 for 42. Warren had 12 for 33. Warren was also doing a lot of the 3rd and 1s and 4th and 1s, which you just sort of asked to do. If it wasn't done at Washington, Hayward doing a sneak, Warren was able to just get the yard and a half a lot of the time. So his efficiency was down. But, yeah, Gainwell 7 targets, 7 catches to Warren's 3. Gainwell was probably more involved. I think it does lean into that illness bit more. It was minus 8 or 9 degrees Celsius in Pittsburgh last night. So I think just the smart move was to limit Warren's exposure to the elements and getting hit as much as they could, given, as I said, bigger aspirations in the next 3 weeks.
And one thing that I wanted to take away in this game, Secko, besides the running back situation for Pittsburgh, great to see Devon Achane. He looked like he didn't miss a beat. 12 for 60 on the ground, 6'4", 67 through the air. Again, those ribs don't look to be much of a hindrance as I believe they go into Cincinnati next week, or they take on Cincinnati at home. So it's going to be a great matchup for any of those Dolphins players in that regard there. But all in all, gross game to close out the week. Steelers get one game lead over the Ravens in their conference. We'll jump straight into the injuries before we head into Heroes. Or Secko, you got anything more you wanted to add on that one?
No, look, the only thing is that the Dolphins get back-to-back home games, so no more weather. They've got through that. So if you've got Achane, he could have a massive last 2 weeks. Like he could literally win championships. He's that good. So just be very happy if you've got him, because it's going to be probably against the Bengals and the Bucks. Bucks have looked putrid the last 4 weeks. So I expect Dolphins to be a lot better for our teams if you're still alive in the playoffs, that is.
Let's look ahead. But one thing we do not want to look ahead to, that's with the injuries. Now, as a Bills fan, this one still absolutely hurt me to see. Patty Mahomes going down with an ACL tear. That's not how you want their season to end. With that, the Chiefs have been ruled out of the playoffs. But again, he's the face of the league. It does suck that these big injuries happen. He has been taking a massive amount of hits this year. I think he's the second most hit quarterback behind Justin Herbert on the year so far. So that could be weighing into the injuries he's kind of been carrying along with. But how did you feel about this one, Secko? Losing Patty Mahomes to an ACL at this point of the year, he's probably going to be out until maybe mid to late November next year, given the usual timeline. So how do you feel about Mahomes and the Chiefs for the rest of this year?
Yeah, you're right. You never want to see the good players in the league do their ACLs, get injured anyway. But serious injuries like this, I mean, the mini positive, if you will, for the Chiefs is it wasn't they weren't 11-3 and deep in a Super Bowl run, hoping on Gardner Minshew to win another one, and they were eventually. I mean, they were out anyway. They might have won this game if he didn't get injured, but I still think they're going to miss regardless. So. Yeah, it's probably, never a good time, but good for this season. Just sucks for next season. They're going to have to look for a bridging quarterback. I'm expecting they'll pay up for someone because they need to be relevant. Because, if they're just treading water for another year, it's another year of, see what happens. Andy Reid might even just walk at this rate. It might be his time. But, it sucks for Patrick Mahomes. It sucks for the Chiefs, but it's good for your Bills if no one else.
Yeah, let's see how he can go to close out the year. Another big ACL, but on the defensive side of the ball, Micah Parsons for the Green Bay Packers. It has been confirmed that it was an ACL tear. Again, you absolutely hate to see this. You could clearly tell once he'd left the game too that they'd lost a step. They were definitely down a pass rusher. He makes a massive impact night in, night out. Same timeline for him. He'll be back towards that back end. So you think that this hurts their Super Bowl aspirations for this year. It's a massive loss. And also Christian Watson was ruled out with a chest injury for the Packers in this one too. So Secko, same thing. Do you think with Micah Parsons going out, it might lead to more friendlier game scripts for the passing game of the Packers itself, or would you not really read into it too much on that regard?
Yeah, it's hard to know what it actually does. They've got the Bears this week, so I feel like it's going to be a bit more shootouty, potentially. So it could be a good thing for both, from a fantasy perspective. As long as you haven't got the Packers D, I think the Packers D obviously take a pretty decent hit because now they've got no Micah Parsons and no Kenny Clark, who they gave in that trade. So they're still a decent defensive unit, but they lose a bit of that pop. So it may make for some better offensive situations for the pass catches, especially with Watson out potentially as well.
And more on the offensive side of the ball, Bam Knight, running back for the Cardinals, was ruled out in the second half with an ankle injury. Looked like he was losing some work to Michael Carter, even so in that game. So we'll touch on that a little bit later on. Rome Odunze, he was meant to be a go for the game this week. He re-aggravated his foot injury, so we'll have to wait and see how that looks in this week and if they kind of can put a timeline on it. Luther Burden also in that same game. He didn't return after dealing with an ankle injury himself. But the one that I have to ask you, Secko, and ask how you're feeling, of course, Devontae Adams with that hamstring injury at the back end of that game, you could tell clearly straight away he was just running normally. like he'd been shot by a sniper, pulled up and on the ground, visibly frustrated. Doesn't sound good from head coach Sean McVay. He's probably done for the rest of the regular season, so 3 more weeks. How do you feel about him and the team as a whole? Is it just all Puka now? Or will there be someone else kind of emerging as a pass catcher, do you think? Or how do you feel with, Devontae going down?
Yeah, it's not good, but the fortunate thing is the Rams have locked up a playoff spot and can give Adams 3 weeks, if things go right, 4 weeks off before they have to worry about playing a meaningful game again. So obviously it's harder to win. It's hard to get the first round bye without him. But, I think it's just all Puka. I think he gets a massive uptick. He's so good. He can move around. He can beat defenders. So it's hard to double him as well. There's not really a Devontae replacement, obviously, for someone that good, but there's not anyone on the roster of the sort of the size and jump ball ability or boundary ability to do what he does. So they're not really going to be able to put someone in. You've got your gadget kind of guys, and that's sort of how it's going to go. But to be honest, it'll be ground game. They'll utilize both running backs a lot over the next 3 weeks. And obviously the 3 tight ends as well. They do come into it. I think Colby Parkinson is probably the best pickup from the lot in the wake of his injury, personally.
Yeah, he's been scoring touchdowns for fun too. I think he's had 6 in the last 6 games there for the Rams. So we'll wait and see how those next couple of weeks go on. Great call on the 2 running backs. Why not use both of those guys? Yeah, that's a great idea there. We'll jump into our heroes of the week in terms of SuperCoach scorers in each position. Quarterback, Secko. We've had a couple of names that should not be on this list usually. And starting from the top, Trevor Lawrence with a massive 88 points. He will jump up 3.2 million, and he now has the current highest 3-week average, 4 points better than the next best in Josh Allen. Of course, a lot of that going to that 88 points. I think he had, was it 5 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown or something? It was 5 or 6 total touchdowns, which he nuked me in that Creators League. Did not think 40 points was coming at a T-Law in that one. So how did you feel about him? He has been playing a bit more consistently the last few weeks since getting Jacoby Myers. Bashal Tootin, he's also dealing with an injury himself. He's probably going to be ruled out for a couple of weeks. So that's one thing to mention for the Jags. T-Law, can we expect him back in this list, Secko, or what? I can't even put into words what's happening there in Jacksonville.
Yeah, it's weird. They've been a lot better than they've ever been before, and Trevor Lawrence is. But we've sort of applauded Liam Cohen for the majority of the year. He's been really good at getting them in the right sort of playing the right way on offense, but also looks like he's sort of his game plan, his play calling is in fits into Trevor Lawrence's skill set. I mean, they've been up with a depleted Colts. Without Sauce Gardner, and then the Jets without Sauce Gardner, funnily enough. He's done it against 2 easier defenses. They got Denver next. We'll see what happens. I wouldn't be starting Trevor in the semifinals of your playoffs just quietly, but you never know because he's been way better than we thought. This week was just absolutely ridiculous. I think 3 of those touchdowns went to Travis Etienne. Like that's it's a weird thing to do as a quarterback is to throw 3 passing touchdowns to your running back and no rushing ones. So we'll see what happens there. I wouldn't be rushing to start him, but he has been hot for a few weeks now.
And with those Etienne touchdowns, 3 catches, all of them are touchdowns. So you can't imagine that efficiency week in, week out. It was against the Jets too. You have to give them some credit for his monster score. They're a terrible defense currently at the moment. We also have Bo Nix, 58 points. He was second on this list. Kirk Cousins with 53, all thanks to Cole Pitts going absolutely ballistic. Of course, Goff and Purdy both having 51 points here. And Wet Sock, the sock man himself, putting up 49 points. Nothing towards Justin Jefferson, but still he gets the job done, mainly on the ground. How do you feel about these remaining top 4, Secko? Who really sticks out to you as someone who might gain some traction as we close out the year?
Yeah, the biggest one's Brock Purdy. He came back for a couple of weeks before the bye. Didn't look himself. Wasn't mobile. Just didn't look like himself, really, to be honest. He was just not he didn't have the poise, he didn't have the confidence, and that pretty much all flipped around. I know he was only playing the Titans, so take from that what you will, but he had 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had 40 on the ground as well. He looks like he's back to that risk to take off and get sort of chunk yards, 12 to 15 yards at a time. So Colts, Bears, next 2 weeks. I think Purdy's going to be a strong starting consideration for me. For me in my rankings over the next 2 weeks. So this week against the Colts, I think indoors is a perfect position with the way that offense is humming.
Great run home for Brock Purdy. We actually had him as one of our starts for the week in the quarterback position on Thursday night show. Another guy that we had here was Jackson Dart, Secko, from you. He is in our honorable mentions for this week in terms of SuperCoach scoring. Josh Allen had 48, CJ Stroud 46, and Dart 45. So he's just still getting it done on the ground, through the air. Yeah, absolutely love to see that. How do you feel about Dart? I guess not only for the remainder of the year, but I know it's probably foreshadowing a bit too early, but Malik Neighbors coming back next year. Cam Scatterbo will come back at some point. Where do you think he might be able to sit? Would he be a top 5 quarterback next year when everything's all said and done in SuperCoach, or how do you kind of see that playing out for the future of Jackson Dart?
Yeah, look, there's plenty to go. I can see them drafting with their first round pick, depending where it is. If it's really high, they might even trade down and take a wide receiver and have just 2 studs, and then Wandale as the third slot guy. With Scatterboo, with Theo Johnson, who everyone's watched this show knows I love. Their offensive line's a lot better. They're set up with the right head coach. We're seeing what's happened with Drake May, who was good last year, but he's gone to another level with the right coaching, the right offensive coordinator and head coach combination. If that happens in New York, I think this start of this year, I said Drake May. I think he was my quarterback 6, and everyone sort of laughed at me a bit. I'll have Jackson Dart in that same frame as long as everything's right. Neighbors is back, and they draft someone good. I think that he's right up there in the top handful. Mahomes obviously gone. Who knows what Joe Burrow is going to be doing next year? There's options there, but I think this guy, as a fantasy quarterback, he has that ability to do it in multiple ways, which I think. And he's a winner. They're not winning at the moment, and it's really hard when guys who've won their whole life go to crappy organizations and lose. But he'll eventually start winning with Malik Neighbors. We forget Malik Neighbors was potentially the top 2 or 3 wide receiver options this year for a lot of people. He was right up the tippy top of fantasy drafts, and then we lost him really early. Dart never really got him, never had him to play with, and he's still been a super relevant top 8-9 quarterback in fantasy. So I think he's definitely in that top 6 to 8 at the absolute minimum next year.
Completely agree. He ticks all the boxes that we're looking for in a quarterback in terms of fantasy point scoring. We just know how much of a cheat code that is, that rushing production, rushing touchdowns, and then he can throw a couple of bombs as well into it. Yeah, it's going to be wheels up for Dart next year, pending how the coaching system plays out. Even without, he's probably still going to be pretty good. Moving on to running back heroes of the week, we've got James Cook and Etienne with 59 points there. We touched on Etienne. He was just dominant in that factor. James Cook as well, plenty of touchdowns. He really led that comeback for the Bills after going down 21 points very early up against the Pats. In that same game, Patriots and the Bills, Travion Henderson took two to the house, I think it was. I know he had a monster run, and then one definitely went to the house, but he had 57 points. He's just being tried and true these last few weeks, even with Ramondre there. It was a good matchup up against the Bills. I mean, super leaky against the run, but it's just great to see him. Give him enough touches, and a couple of them will go to the house. How do you feel about Travion for the rest of the year, Secko? Does this kind of limit how you feel about Stevenson's impact on this team with his touches, or you still kind of, how do you kind of see it with 3 weeks to go?
Yeah, it sort of has to now. I've been saying it since that breakout game when I think it was a Thursday night game. We spoke about it after the fact, and we sort of said Ramondre will be back, but Vrabel would be stupid to put him back as the main guy, and he sort of has, and he's sort of continue to do it, and he really is keeping Trevo down. But the bye week, come out of that, he's too explosive to be ignored. So yeah, I expect it to happen. I got rid of him in SuperCoach reluctantly, but he facilitated getting Bucky Irving, which is nothing to write home about. But for the bye week replacement, I would love to have him again because he's that perfect RB5 and matchup fill in if you've got a really bad matchup against, say, the Texans or the like. So yeah, he's should be set. They've got pretty easy matchups: Ravens, Jets, and then the Dolphins. So probably can't have three better matchups collectively for a running back.
You love to see it. I'm still sitting with him at my RB5. Thankfully, I had no trades a few weeks ago, or I would have been, he probably would have been slotted out too, probably for Bucky as well in that space. In third, in the running back heroes for this week, Bijan with 50 points. Again, you love to see him, even without Drake London and Kirk Cousins under center, he's still performing. Tyron Tracy Jr. with 46 points. Very friendly matchup up against the Commanders. They've been woeful all year. DeAndre Swift with 44 to close out the top five, and then Josh Jacobs and Kyron with 42 points as nice little honorable mentions there that we love to see. But how do you feel about the rest of these guys, Secko? Same thing as the quarterbacks. Anyone that really stands out that you think moving forward might be a bit stickier than weeks prior?
Tracy and Swift are sort of up and down. They can do it any week and sort of somewhat disappear, which, they've been better of late. Swift happened to sort of get into the end zone as well and get a bit more work. Josh Jacobs has been good. He's been sort of carrying an injury for a while. He had a couple of down weeks there, back to 32 last week, 43 this week. That's good to see just from a consistency. All year he was really, really consistent for the year. So if you've got him, be thankful you can hold him with a fair bit of confidence. Again, Bears in Chicago, probably going to be cold, wintry, snowy. And then they've got Baltimore and the Vikings, not as hard as it was seemingly early. So another good run out. Jacobs, I think, is going to be good. Kyron's done really well. I'm just a bit worried that they'll continue to share more and more. And if he doesn't get those touchdown opportunities when they come, you may be left a little bit short with Kyron.
Wide receivers heading on Amon-Ra with a very cool 69 points to top this list. In that same game, we actually had two of the other top three, Puka Nacua with 46 and Jamison Williams with 45. That game just produced so many things for us. I had Stafford in a little DFS lineup. He only had two passing touchdowns on the day. I thought he was going to have a whole heap more than that, but their running backs just got way too much done in that regard. The Lions wide receivers, Secko, very, very great signs. You knew that in this matchup there was going to be plenty of points. You probably knew that Lions were going to be playing from behind at some point in this game. That's the way that shaped out to be. How do you feel about them? Like, do you think they'll kind of come back down to earth next week? Because this was definitely a down game for Gibbs. I think Monty even got into the end zone at one point, but without Sam Laporta, they now have that consolidated target tree between Amon-Ra and Jamo that those guys are really just outperforming to what we think they probably could be doing together.
Yeah, they've been. It was so funny that game. Like the lines are up, and then I had a meeting at work, and I hate missing Rams games, but I couldn't even have it on my phone. It was a serious meeting, and I came back, and they'd put on 17-0, and they're up by 2 scores, and I was a bit. It all happened really quick in the third quarter, and then they had to play catch up, and that's when Jamo got hot again, and Amon-Ra's amazing, but. It's funny, Gibbs he's had three touchdowns. He's had 0, 3, 0, 3, 0, 3, 0 in touchdowns in the last 7 weeks. He either has 0 or 3, which is unbelievable. It's probably the most random touchdown stat or touchdown trend I've ever seen in my life. But so this week against Pittsburgh, Gibbs will go mental. Put the C on him in SuperCoach. But if you've got him, obviously he can be hot any given week. But I think their run. Pittsburgh, Minnesota, and Chicago. They're all plus matchups again. The only game is the Bears outdoors. The rest are inside out of the cold weather this time of year. So Goff loves it there. We saw it again. He loves chucking it when it's dry and nice inside. So I expect him to keep rolling as they have been.
Old house cat Goff at 4 for wide receiver. We have Nico Collins, and we actually do have a little comment in here from Theo, which I'll throw up here. With Texans playing better, thoughts on buying Nico Collins? And Secko, I will throw this to you. They do have, I did just have their matchups here in front of me. They have got, where did I see that? They've got the Raiders this week. They have a tougher matchup against the Chargers next week. And then week 18, they have the Colts. So 2 pretty plus matchups, you'd think. The Chargers are top 5 against wide receivers on the year so far. But how do you buy into that? Do you like Nico for the rest of the year, given how consistent he's been lately?
Well, the thing there, CJ Stroud's been better since he came back. He came back, filled back in for Davis Mills, but he just didn't sort of seem. He sort of didn't seem right earlier than that as well. But he just sort of wasn't really all there. And in the last couple of weeks, the last 3 weeks really, he's hit his stride. The last couple of weeks definitely. And Nico's seen the uptick to the sort of guaranteed wide receiver 1 that we know he is. So yeah, if you've got a trade to do, I'm even tossing up myself Rashee Rice if he's viable with Minshew or not. Him to Nico, I'm assuming is not too much more money. I haven't looked yet. I just opened today and I've been busy, but he's actually cheaper than Rice by the look of it. So you can make money there. It's not a bad trade. If you want to trade someone out, though, you have Devontae Adams, for example. I think he's a really good option, Collins, to bring in.
Also have DJ Moore and Cortland Sutton scoring 41 points here to close out the top 5. And Jamar Chase and Jalen Naylor putting up 36 points apiece. And Chris Olave and Troy Franklin putting up 35 points apiece there. So there was a couple surprising names. It'd be interesting to see if DJ Moore can keep it up with Rome Odunze possibly out for another week or 2 there with the Bears, but we'll wait and see how that plays out. We'll move straight on to tight ends. Secko, the guy that we've all been waiting for, probably me more than absolutely anybody, but Cole Pitts putting up a massive 80 points. He actually put me to the sword in 2 of the 3 playoffs that I lost this week. So it was bittersweet to say the most. 80 points, his stat line in the first game of the week up against the Falcons, pulling off an upset win over the Bucs. 11 catches, 166 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I couldn't believe it in this game, just how it seems like the Bucs were scared of him or something. It's like they could see him, but they didn't want to go near him. They'd throw the ball up. They're like, oh, okay, let's let him catch it without contesting and let him do a heap of yak after getting it in his hands. But he's shot up 4.3 million after this week, Secko, and when it's probably all said and done, he'll probably will finish inside the top 5, maybe even top 3 tight ends. He might finish over Brock Bowers at this rate. How do you feel about Cole Pitts? Do you think he can keep it up moving forward? Kirk Cousins did throw for 373 yards and 3 scores in this game, all to Cole Pitts. So you can't expect that each week, but good signs of life that Cole Pitts can actually do something.
Yeah, the thing is, it's this. If you want to hear one thing about Cole Pitts for the rest of the year, this is it. It's all tied to Drake London. If Drake London's out, Pitts is a top 5 tight end. If London's there, he's a borderline tight end 1-2. It's just the reality of it. If London's there, he'll get that target share that Pitts got. He had 12 targets, 13 targets, something like that. 10 the week before without London as well. But if London's back, he just gets it all because he's essentially the same type of size, same type of guy, but he's just better at everything that Cole Pitts does than Cole Pitts is, which is obvious reasons. He's a wide receiver, and Cole Pitts is a tight end. So, yeah, it's pretty much keep an eye on London's status. If he's back in, unfortunately, Pitts dials back to probably not as bad as he was because he has gotten better, and Cousins does like the tight end a lot more than Penix did. But, yeah, I don't know if he's right up the tippy top of the top sort of 6 options if London's back.
And it looks like London, they are hopeful that he returns in week 16. But again, they're 5-9. They're kind of out of the playoff race here. So what's the point in bringing him back? But we'll wait and see. Could be some signs of life there for Drake London. Trey McBride, the unanimous number 1 tight end on the year so far, 62 points. in what was meant to be a tough matchup, I know my thought process heading into week 15 was, I hope McBride loses a couple mil. I can just swap Bowers to him next week. He actually made money on that move. I think he was up 790K. He's got a 24 break even. I would still have enough cash in the bank to bring in Bowers or bring in McBride for Bowers. So that's what I'll be doing with oh, what's going on?
You lost me.
Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Secko? Yeah, I can hear you. I just can't see on the screen here.
All right. Yeah, I'm coming back.
There we go. I got you there.
I'm not sure what happened there. I think I might have kicked the switch out.
No, all good. All good. But Trey McBride, Secko, how do you feel about him? He's just, even in poor matchups, he just gets it done no matter what. They do have they've got Falcons next week, Cincinnati, which is the best matchup potentially historically against the tight ends, and then the Rams to close out week 18. So how are you feeling about him at this point of the year?
Yeah, best matchup unless your name is Isaiah likely. Ask anyone who started him in a must-win playoff matchup. Yeah, look, I'm going to do probably the dumbest thing I've done all year, and I was like you. I was hoping he'd lose a bit of cash, or Bowers would actually pull his finger out, but I should have known with Kenny Pickett he wouldn't. I'm going to burn 2 trades and get McBride in for Bowers. I'm also getting rid of Genty in the process and ridding my team of the cancerous Raiders. They are the worst football team in the league and the worst football team probably in recent history. Get rid of Bowers, get rid of Genty. If you've got anyone else, get rid of them. They're horrible. But McBride is the best player all year. Even when Kraft was doing his thing, McBride was the best. And it's hard for me to say because I'm a Kraft guy, but I can't believe I played the numbers game and chosen Bowers over McBride at that time. It's going to be my biggest learn from next year is go with a better player.
It's hard. It's hard to predict that Jacoby Brissett can come in and then just absolutely flip McBride into this beast after he's been with Kyler. I mean, he was already a beast with Kyler, but nowhere near this level.
Not the same.
Where he is with Brissett, and we just can't pick it. Hopefully, Brissett's their starting quarterback next year to kick things off. We had Colby Parkinson, Darren Waller, and Dallas Goedert all put up 44 points in this week. George Kittle, the other top 3 tight end, putting up 37 points. You love to see him getting back in there, and also Gunnar Helm and Theo Johnson to round out the tight ends. Secko, we might just loop in kickers and defenses as well before we get to the heartbreakers of the week. Jason Myers for the Seahawks is just absolutely lights out. Coming back in that game against the Colts, I would have loved it if they lost to the Colts with old man Phillip Rivers at the helm. That would have been absolutely unreal, but he's too clutch down the stretch. Put it anywhere from 60 out, he's going to slot it over. 48 points is ridiculous. Kaimi Fairbairn for the Texans put up 36. Brendan Aubrey put up 33 points there, but he did miss 2 field goals, which probably might have been the difference in that Cowboys game against the Vikings. And McManus for the Packers putting up 32 as well. Anything to say on the kickers, Secko, before we get to the defensive position?
No, just that Myers is clear and away the top kicking option. A lot of talk about how good Aubrey is, how he would be the wide receiver. I think I read last week if he's scored the same as the wide receiver 9. That same stage, Myers had outscored him, so I'm not sure why Aubrey was getting all the credit when Myers was just as good or better, and he's just kicked away again. He's just he doesn't miss. He's so good. He's in the right environment to dominate because Darnold's good enough. And the defense is great enough to get the ball back for him a lot in great position. So, if you somehow manage to get Myers, he's actually a difference maker at the moment.
And with defenses, Secko, one of my worst decisions I made this week was starting the Patriots over the Ravens. I thought that game might have just been a little bit scrappier. I thought there was going to be so many more points in that Ravens-Bengals game, but they shut out the Bengals. They put up 46 points on defense. I think it was a 50-point swing for me in my because I had the Pats with -4, but you just can't pick it week in, week out with these defenses. We had the Bears putting up 36 points, the Eagles shutting out the Raiders, putting up 32, and the Chargers with 26 in their win against the Chiefs. How do you feel about defenses this week, Secko?
No, it's like I said all year. It's so bloody hard to predict. That's why people are saying, "Oh, should I trade?" I don't even know. Like defense A for defense B. You're like, well, next week could be completely different. So you're burning trades. I've literally had the two worst defenses in there. Probably why I ranked 1,200 or something. Because I've had the 49ers and the Cardinals all year. But I've got 3 trades left, so I can make moves now. I can actually burn a trade to get rid of Bowers if I want to, because I haven't been tinkering with my DST. So it's Ravens had some good weeks. Who was poor? The Patriots have been amazing all year. They've had a minus 4. The Packers have been good all year. They've had 2, and Vikings 4. Like it's a full potluck. So if you can take away one thing from this year for next year, just try and pick two DSTs that are not terrible, that play on different weeks, and just lock them in. Don't get injured. Good thing about DSTs, you don't have to trade ever in that line if you don't have to. So I think everybody should do that next year because it's just easier. It's all a guess game.
Great piece of advice, and we'll be sure to cover that at the kickoff or before kickoff of next year's season. We'll be back for sure, start of August, ramping up for that new year. Heartbreakers of the week, Secko. There was plenty of names on this list this week. Kicking off with quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, 12 points. It's way too polarizing. It caught me off guard. I thought I'd sneak in. I thought he might be able to do something against the Bears, who against the quarterbacks have been pretty woeful up until this point. Of course, Shedeur still needs a lot of time to develop in the NFL. Joe Burrow putting up 15 points. That was probably the biggest surprise, I thought. Divisional matchup. They do have very slim chances to make the playoffs, but that game was a must-win. They couldn't do anything. Has not been good. Seeing the comments about him in press conferences and what he's kind of been saying as well doesn't sound too hot. Justin Herbert, 22 points. Again, with that hand injury, you can't really expect too much. They're just running the ball a whole heap, and this was a bit of a dogfight up against the Chiefs. Dak putting up 23 points, very surprising. George Pickens didn't do anything in turn with 9 points, and Mahomes, 28 points here. That ACL just absolutely kills you. But up to that point, he didn't really do too much here. But so quarterbacks in this segment, Secko, we've got Mahomes out of it. Burrow and Dak are probably the biggest 2 names in terms of how we like them for the rest of SuperCoach for the run of the year. Who would you be more worried about? Is there thoughts of with Joe Burrow and the Bengals being eliminated? Do you think they kind of take the foot off the gas? Do they kind of, the mindset isn't where it needs to be? Or would you prefer to just go with Dak and how those guys are sitting? Because it's pretty similar for the Cowboys too. Their playoff chances are very slim.
Yeah, I think for all intents and purposes, they're all eliminated. Think about if Burrow, I'm worried about Burrow just saying no and just wanting out for the year and Jake Browning taking over. They can't make it at Miami, home against Arizona, and then home against Cleveland last round. The next 2 they should win, but the way they've been playing, is pretty bad. So if you got Burrow somehow, I don't think anyone would have him in SuperCoach. If you did though, price is still okay, so you can look to move him out somewhere else. Dak's just a once-off game. I wouldn't worry about Dak. He still plays hard. He'll still play every game, just for pride and continuity. I think there, and he's still a very good option for SuperCoach because I think their run is not too bad from memory. I think we mentioned that. Chargers, and then they've got the Commanders and the Giants last 2. That's pretty sweet. Pretty sweet run home for Dak. I think Dak's a really, really good option. It sucks he had a bit down game, but he can pull it back.
I'm with you there on those guys. For the running back, Heartbreakers, again, hopefully if you played plenty of the other stronger options for this week. Quinshot Judkins, 7 points. He's kind of just fallen off a cliff in terms of production in games that we think are smash matchups, just aren't coming through to fruition. Kamani Vidal, 10 points, sharing that backfield with Amir and Hampton. Genty with 12 points, just rolled horribly in the dice and being drafted to the Raiders for this year. They can there's going to be a whole heap of changes for next year, you'd hope. Irving and Gibbs would be the biggest disappointments from this room. We touched on well, you mentioned Secko with Gibbs. He's kind of had 3 touchdowns or no touchdowns in Pat in the last X amount of weeks. Bucky Irving was a surprise too. I thought they were going to absolutely roll over the Falcons. That was not the case. And in turn, it hurt him the most there. But they're probably the main 2. Any concern for these guys moving forward? I know Bucky, off memory, has a very good run home even still. Gibbs is a little bit harder, but he's just so explosive. If you don't have Gibbs, for instance, one thing I will mention, down 2.7 million with a break even of 59. So it actually opens up the door a little bit for me to bring in Gibbs for the back end of the year, but that's me being selfish. But how do you feel about Irving and Gibbs, Secko? Anything to worry about in this one, or you can throw it away onto next week?
No, I wouldn't about Gibbs. If you can get him in, probably it's not a bad play. Just they're going to have to win game. Now they've dropped that one to the Rams. The Lions have to win. And the best way to win games is to get that guy super involved. So, as I said, they played the next 2 indoors. It's the perfect kind of Gibbs weather. You always see all these highlights are always in Ford Field for some reason or other, and it's usually because it's nice and he gets out into space and he looks good. And so yeah, if you haven't got him, get him. Bucky's got Panthers, Dolphins, Panthers. That's pretty good. Like that's Carolina's been okay, but these are games they have to win as well. Like if they drop either of the games to Carolina, the Bucks are out because they got the tiebreaker when they win that. So there'll be a game clear with a tiebreaker. Essentially, it wraps it up. Or 2 games clear if Carolina win this one. So essentially, they have to win this game on the road. I think Bucky's going to be a big piece of that. Personally. Hopefully Tucker can stay on the sidelines.
Likewise. And that hurt seeing Tucker, of course. He had to be the one taking it into the end zone when they got in close there. Wide receivers, Secko, one that I still can't get over. I know he has been super poor the last 4 or so weeks. But this week against the Cowboys should have been an absolute smash. They put up 30 points, but nothing going to Justin Jefferson. He had 6 SuperCoach points in this game. Addison got a bit more involved. Jalen Naylor got involved. TJ Hawkinson. But Jefferson, nothing's really clicking with that connection with McCarthy. You probably couldn't have trusted him a couple of weeks ago. I was blind heading into this week, but now I can see you cannot trust Jefferson whatsoever for the remainder of the year. At this point in SuperCoach, he's at a measly 6.8 million. So he lost another 1.6 million last week, which is just mind-blowing. Should be cheap for next year. That's probably the only positive thing to take out of his horrible year, this one. But how do you feel about Justin Jefferson, Secko? I mean, the wet sock, he just he does it again.
Yeah, well, 8 targets. Like it's one of those things. He had a clear target leader. They're just not very good targets to him. He's double covered a lot. The Cowboys are terrible, but they can still put bodies around him. And JJ McCarthy's unfortunately like I'm not saying he's anything like Josh Allen. I'm not saying he's good like Josh Allen in any way, but Josh Allen's first year, if you can remember back, he had a real hard grasp with how hard to throw it. Like every throw was full velocity, and those balls just pop through hands way too often. So McCarthy's got that at the moment where he's throwing like an 8-yard pass in pretty clear space and he's just ripping it, and it's getting on Jefferson too quick. And it's happened a few times I've seen where Jefferson's so good that he knows how the ball should be coming to him and doesn't have to adjust to a rocket ball from 4 yards away. So that'll come in time. I'm not worried about him long term at the moment. 8 targets equals 2 catches for 22. It's just no good. You know, Jalen Naylor gets both the touchdowns. Jefferson drops 1 touchdown catch, doesn't get another target. In the end zone, it's just one of those things. You can't do anything about him. Just don't put him in your lineup, unfortunately. If he kills you and he has a 40-something, great, be happy. Be happy that it's on your bench, but be happy because, you know, we need to start seeing it without being too depressed. Yeah,
and at this point too, especially in traditional fantasy, you lose, you go home. You cannot be running that risk with Jefferson. Yeah. I did in one of my leagues this week against the Cowboys, and that league is out the door. Ladd McConkey putting up 6 points. you can put that down to Herbert not really being able to throw too much with that offensive line. They're still struggling. They're just going to keep leaning on that running game. Tedderall McMillan, a down week for him, 7 points. Michael Pittman with Phillip Rivers, 8 points. Again, Phillip Rivers, he just couldn't really throw the ball past 10 yards, so there wasn't really much going on there. George Pickens with 9 points. Secko, he could be playing his way out of a massive bag of money by the end of this season. These last couple of weeks has just been horrid. Do you think for him it's all just a mental thing and like his attitude towards the game the last couple of weeks? Because the talent is there. Even with CD being back, he still had a couple of games where he was outperforming CD, but these last two have just been super gross.
He had back-to-back 50-point games in SuperCoach with CD there in weeks 11 and 12. Yeah, it's all attitude. That's unfortunate. That's what got him out of Pittsburgh as well. It's been his problem his whole career. Georgia had an attitude problem as well. Sort of if things aren't going great, he drops his shoulders, and we saw it in that game against Detroit. He wasn't even trying in the last quarter and a half after CD had gone out with a concussion. He was obviously getting double covered. He was getting scragged a lot. Didn't like it, but just stopped playing and sort of carried through, which sucks. But it can turn around. I just don't know. The motivation has to be money now for him, and probably his agent is the one who has to get in his ear and say, as you said, you're playing yourself out of some money here. So 3 fairly beatable matchups he could get right really in a really big way. For SuperCoach, it's hard to sit back and watch when he's just lost $2.5 million and he's down to 16. He was up to almost 20 million a couple of weeks ago. So it's a tough hold, but I think you almost have to with that price unless you want to go to a Nico, like we said.
Tight ends. A lot of stinkers in this list. Jake Ferguson, along with George Pickens, did not put up a good week. 5 points. Mark Andrews also with 5 points, and what again we thought was going to be a smash matchup against the Bengals. Lamar only threw the ball 12 times in that game. 2 of them were touchdowns. Thankfully, or it could have been absolutely horrendous. Tyler Warren with 6 points. Don't love to see that with Phillip Rivers under center. You thought he would have got a little bit more involved. Dalton Kincaid, 9 points. They didn't really, or they were trying to use him here in this one, but he was being covered more so than usual. The Pats definitely had that figured out compared to their earlier game against the Bills. And Brock Bowers, 11 points. Time to move him out, isn't it, Secko? I know for me that'll be the one trade I make this week is Bowers to McBride. Luckily, I had that 4.7 mil gap that you need to make it work, but you just can't feel confident with any of these Raiders players whatsoever. Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers, both amazing talents, terrible organization, and a handicapped at the knees well and truly. Tight end losers or hero heartbreakers for this week. Brock Bowers has to be at that top of that list. So how do you feel about him, Secko?
Yeah, I should have got rid of him last week. It's actually a worse financial position, which I didn't think was possible. And it's also 50 points, the difference. The argument has been some weeks McBride doesn't dominate either. And that's cool. That's cool if it was true. But the reality is, Bowers has outscored McBride twice. And one of those, he scored 40, McBride scored 36. But then McBride's also scored 45, 46, 48, like always consistently high scores. His bad score, 28, 27, 25. He's that only, Kittle's been a lot better as well. I want to lump Kittle into the positives here. But yeah, I think if you've got Bowers, if you haven't got Kittle, that's only, $700,000 to get to Kittle. That's a much better play at the moment. We all know Bowers is great, but Pickett is not. Geno Smith is not. Whoever's calling plays is probably Pete Carroll is at this point because they just are. Yeah, they're just horrible. You can keep them if you want. Be prepared to have 12 to 14 points every week and be happy with it. But I just move him. I'm going down to one trade to move him because I can't afford it in one trade, but I just don't want him anymore. That's just how it is. And I'm maybe petty, but it's fine. I'm happier.
Make the call. It definitely looks better looking at McBride over Bowers in your SuperCoach lineup. Let's hope that trend can continue for the next week. And love the Kittle call. If you don't have the money to make it work and you don't have Kittle, no brainer. Spend $700,000 and upgrade to Kittle. He's going to be much better down the stretch run home. Kickers and defenses, the heartbreakers for this week. Evan McPherson for the Bengals put up a big donut or a DNP. Thankfully, they did not, or not thankfully, hopefully didn't start him, but you would have had your bench cover roll in if that was the case. Tyler Luke putting up 12 points. You don't love it. Borogalis for the Pats put up 14 points. Not horrible weeks, but you could tell the hero kickers, they 3x'd some of those scores there. The defenses that let you down, myself included, the Patriots with -4 points. Terrible. The Cardinals, that's definitely their third or fourth negative scoring game so far in this year. 49ers putting up 0 points against the Titans was a bit surprising. The Packers with 2 and the Vikings with 4. Anyone here worth mentioning, Secko, as we close out the heartbreakers for week 15?
Worth mentioning is the 49ers. They played the Titans and they couldn't score points against the Titans. I know they're injured. Every broadcaster of every game finds a way. Even Troy Aikman, they were talking about the AFC playoff picture, found a way to talk about how great San Francisco was, which blew my mind today. And how great Kyle Shanahan is as a coach. They were talking about the AFC playoff picture. Yes, they've got some injuries, but it's not. They shouldn't be this shit. They shouldn't be getting 0 SuperCoach points week after week. They had a couple of good weeks there, but they're playing the Titans. It's pathetic. If they do something in the playoffs, this is not going to be a very happy person on the other end of this microphone, because they just I can't. They're the new Chiefs in my eyes. The league thinks they're the golden children. So hopefully they lose a lot of games, because I can't stomach them much longer.
Being a Rams fan, that's not too surprising either. Being in that interdivision there. That closes out the heartbreakers and heroes for week 15 through a SuperCoach lens. We'll be jumping straight into our waivers, putting on a different hat, a traditional fantasy hat. It is week 16, the second week of playoffs for most. Hopefully you're not in a league where this is the first week of playoffs and playing through week 18. Gross, tell your commissioner to change that next year. In week 18, a lot of teams just kind of don't play starters. We saw it with Mahomes and the Chiefs last year. None of those starters played, and it absolutely nuked your week 18 championship week if you had any of those players on roster. So waivers for week 16, Secko, let's dive into it. We have a name each for you in each of the positions: running back, wide receivers, tight end, and then we'll give our number one quarterback streamer of the week in one quarterback leagues. All of these guys are mainly under that 50% rostered mark in Sleeper, so they're well and truly available. Could be one of the most important waiver claims that you put in if you are still fighting in the playoffs and looking forward to that championship round next week. Running back, Secko, we'll kick things off. I've got Michael Carter for the Arizona Cardinals. That Bam Knight injury, I think he's probably going to be done for the next couple of weeks. Michael Carter, even though it's not pretty, he gets used heavily in the receiving game, which we love. Jacoby throws the ball 45 plus times, so there's definitely a piece of the pie for him to go around. He had 18 touches in week 15 up against the Texans, which was a pretty tough matchup. Didn't do too badly whatsoever. We've seen him in the past fill in for Benson, Bam Knight, DeMarcado, and he's done pretty well. So if it's purely just for him, I'm not worried about Amari DeMarcado. I'd much rather have Michael Carter, and he's at 10% rostered currently. Could really sneak in to be an impact player for your team. They do have the Bengals in week 17 as well. So if you're completely decimated at the running back position, you can pick this guy up for nothing. Might have to throw a couple of bucks left if there's other guys in the league that are contending for running backs as well for the week ahead. But Michael Carter for me at 10% owned is my number one running back pickup for this week.
Yeah, I love that, mate. Cardinals move the ball well. They score well, and Carter looks a lot better after he had these opportunities. And they have good matchups coming forward. So love to play my running back. waiver pickup of the week is Keaton Mitchell, 7% owned for the Baltimore Ravens. He's proven to be a great change of pace back for the Ravens. Obviously, they don't want Derrick Henry taking all the snaps. This guy, last 2 games, 14 carries, 140 yards on the ground. Also, strangely enough, he's had no catches over those 2 weeks. He's known as a bit of a guy out of the backfield who can creep out. I expect that to come back. He had 5 catches in the previous 2 games. Before that, and they are playing the Patriots this week, so I think they'll need that change of pace, third down, catching back potentially if they are trailing at any point. So Keaton Mitchell can definitely be a flex buy replacement this week.
Big fan. I picked him up in a couple of leagues before the week kicked off. Only takes one play from Keaton Mitchell and you're off to the races, especially if you are caught in a pinch at the running back position. Wide receivers, Secko, my number 1 guy for this week. Jaden Reed for the Green Bay Packers. Again, buying into that injury bug that has struck in week 15. Christian Watson, he had been their lead number 1 wide receiver for the past couple of weeks. With his injury, he'll probably miss next week, you'd imagine, and maybe even longer. I think Jaden Reed could definitely prove a nice number to put in there in his stead. 46% rostered. They have Chicago Bears and then the Ravens over the next couple of weeks. Reed, he's very similar to Keaton Mitchell. He only needs 1 play. It's only his second game back after being injured for 9 or so weeks. He had 5 for 55 on 6 targets, 65% of the snaps, and I think he could get up to that 75% of the snaps if Watson is ruled out for next week and the following week. So don't mind him paired with a good quarterback and Jordan Love. Hopefully it's not too windy in Chicago next week where he can still get a lot done through the air. But that's where I'd be going given the current state of the wide receiver position on waivers.
And my wide receiver waiver pickup this week is Jalen Coker of the Carolina Panthers. Only 10% owned. He's been a great player for a couple of years now, but no luck. He's been injured a lot. Finally getting some continuity in his game. And he had a team-wide targets in last week. He had 4 catches, 60 yards and a touchdown. The week before, he had 4 catches, 74 yards and a touchdown. So Bryce Young starting to trust him, starting to find him. I think I can expect that to continue against Tampa Bay, who just looked putrid against the Falcons and allowed a whole bunch of stuff to happen to Kyle Pitts. And Jalen Coker is as good, if not better than Kyle Pitts in my head.
It hurts to think out loud. I'm probably with you there on that one. Coker, he's scoring touchdowns over the last couple of weeks. Tight ends, I've been a little bit cheeky. I've got 2. I think there's just 2 guys, at least through my eyes, and I just can't. If you don't have them, if they're still out on waivers, especially if you aren't underdog in your leagues, I think they're just going to be great options down the stretch. Colby Parkinson, again, playing into the injuries of the receivers before him. Devontae going down. Very big chance he misses the rest of the regular season. Colby Parkinson is a massive TD threat in his stead. 6 touchdowns in the last 2 games, or last 6 games rather. Of course, he did have 2 the last game against Detroit, but up against the Seahawks next week and then the Falcons in week 17. Seahawks have been absolutely busted against covering that tight end position. That's been a weak area of the field for those guys, and the Falcons haven't been too hot all year round. In turn with that, Darren Waller is the other name that has to be mentioned. If you do not have him, if you are struggling at tight end, go pick up Darren Waller. He's got Cincinnati Bengals this week coming up. I don't want to say touchdown guarantee given how poorly the Ravens tight ends just went, but Darren Waller scoring 2 touchdowns this week or in the game that was just played today against the Steelers. Steelers have been horrid against tight ends. Cincinnati are levels worse in that regard. So at home in Miami with Tua out of the cold, Darren Waller should feast up against the Bengals. And I think he finishes as a top 5 tight end at the end of week 16 when it's all said and done. So they're my 2 in Colby Parkinson and Darren Waller that you can pick off the waivers for week 16.
Hope so, mate. I got Waller in a bunch of spots that I'm playing in the semi-final next week, or this week. So, I hope you're right. I'm annoyed that he wasted his 2 touchdowns in junk time this week, but hopefully 2 next week. I've also gone a little bit cheated with like you and had 2 options at tight end. One is highly owned. That's why I've gone with two. Toronto Gadsden, if he still is available, he's almost 2/3 owned out there, so likely he's rostered. But he would have been dropped in a few leagues purely because he's been pretty putrid for the last month. We saw Quentin Johnson out. He's picked back up team league targets for the team. He had over 10 PPR fantasy points for the first time since week 10, which he did 4 straight weeks before that. I expect if QJ's out again for this to continue. But if QJ is in, my other waiver option is Gunnar Helm. Gunnar Helm had a big game. A touchdown. First touchdown for about 4 or 5 weeks, but he's had 6 catches and or a touchdown in 3 of the last 4. So he's giving us a pretty decent kind of run since the bye. He's had 5 targets, 7 targets, 7 targets, only 2 targets last week, but then 4 targets and a touchdown this week. You can do a lot worse. He's only 2% owned. So if you're desperate at tight end and you want to get someone in and everyone else is taking your deep league, Gunnar Helm 2% could be a desperation option if you need.
Very sneaky one with Gunnar Helm. He could be a great dynasty pickup for next year if they get rid of Chika Okonkwo. Has a nice little connection there with Cam Ward, and you'd hope that he gets better and has a better situation when they walk into the start of 2026 season. Streamers for week 16 in one quarterback league, Secko. For myself, I'm pairing up my tight end and Darren Waller and pairing him with Tua up against the Bengals. Bengals are ranked 30th in fantasy points allowed to opposing quarterbacks. He could throw a couple touchdowns to Waller. He could throw one to Waddle. Would not surprise me whatsoever if he walked out of this game with 3 touchdowns. Hopefully they don't all come along the ground in or through Devon Achane and Jalen Wright or Ollie Gordon. But at home against the Bengals, should be plenty of points throwing around in this one. I think Tua at 19% owned is a great streamer for this week if you are caught in a pinch.
Yeah, absolutely. And my one QB quarterback streamer for week 16 is Bryce Young. Sounds a bit gross. I'm also pairing up with my wide receiver streamer and Jalen Coker. He's 21% owned. The reality is we just saw what Kirk Cousins at this stage of his career did against Tampa Bay last week. Made him look amazing. And I expect a similar sort of thing to happen with Bryce Young. Last home game was against the Rams, tough defense. And Bryce Young had a QB4 overall finish on the week. So I expect a very similar, maybe not as high as that, but I expect plenty of production from him. The likes of McMillan, Coker, and also out of the backfield as well. A bit of dump-off work. I can see Bryce Young in a division game, in a must-win, massive division game, doing lots to keep his team in it for a very long time.
Love the call out. Could be a monster game from Bryce Young there up against the Bucks. That closes out our waivers and streamers for the week ahead, your second week of fantasy playoffs. Hopefully a couple of these guys can come through if you are struggling, and you can meet us here next week with a smile on your face, ready to go to the big dance in traditional fantasy. Before we close this thing out, Secko, in terms of a SuperCoach lens, I know we're chopping and changing a little bit tonight, but we've got a massive trade talk show tomorrow for SuperCoach. We'll be here at 7:30 as per usual to get through all of that. Early looks on trades. I know we've been dabbling on ourselves, what we're kind of doing. Sounds like we're both on that Bowers to McBride movement. Neither of us have Mahomes, but which way would you be moving in that quarterback position if you did have Mahomes and you could move off? I'll have to throw out Lamar Jackson potentially as an option that you might go with. I'll save that for the both of us there. But besides him, is there anyone else that you like to bring in for Mahomes after he's out for the year with that ACL?
Well, Lamar made money this week, so, his break-even's only 13 as well. So it's now or never for Lamar. No, it's a rough one. I know a lot of people had Mahomes. He's 24% owned of all, but I'm betting he's even higher owned for the top sort of 5%. If I had to guess, 31.8%. So a third of the top 5 is going to be looking elsewhere. It's tough. It's a bit of a personal preference thing. I said Dak earlier. I think Dak had one bad game, which is a good thing. You save a bit of money there. He's less than Mahomes. Or he's more than Mahomes, but only 1.8. You can make that work, I think, fairly easily. If not, there's guys around that price. You could look at, Drake May passed his buy, did it again, 42 points, sort of hit his regular sort of floor amount. You're making money going Mahomes down to May if you need to. So even if you traded from May to Mahomes, for example, it's you may want to go back. Hurts I wouldn't trust just purely because he can be game scripted out a little bit, and Trevor Lawrence I absolutely wouldn't trust paying more. He's $23.5 million. What is he? The second highest? Wow, he's the second highest price quarterback. But yeah, there's options there. But Bowers, I'm with you. Must go to either McBride or Kittle, whoever you haven't got.
In terms of those quarterbacks, you definitely can't trust Trevor Lawrence. I thought you were going to keep going down that list because then you've got Bo Nix right after him, another name that you cannot trust whatsoever. Caleb Williams, even below, you can't trust. Drake May sticks out like a sore thumb. You make $300,000 in the process. He's got Baltimore this week, and then the Jets in Miami to close out the year, which you'd expect them to win both of those pretty comfortably. So that's probably the one that sticks out to me the most there. But
the only other option is Brock Purdy. Did speak about him in the Heroes section, but he's got a very cushy run. He looks a lot better, and he's been he's had after a couple of bad games. I think he falls around that 40 mark, and I really think he can have some spike games over the next couple of weeks. Last two games are at home as well, which traditionally does better over his career.
19.8 million again, so you're probably making an extra $1.5 million on top if you are bringing him down. So. Plenty of options there. We'll be here back again tomorrow night to go through all of that in depth. We'll have our trade talk, our unlimited winner, and we'll be looking to go from there as we look forward to week 16. So thanks heaps for tuning in to the Insight NFL podcast. If you are following along and watching on YouTube, smack that like button, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell. We really do appreciate it here at NFL Fantasy, and we will see you guys tomorrow night. Thanks for tuning in.
Goodbye.